Yeah. And then it's moving, so there's
All right.
tons of activity right now.
Ready to begin.
So,
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight and everybody online as well. For coming to, this is the second meeting of our community meetings that we're having to update our Community Wildfire Protection Plan. My job tonight is to introduce you to the core members who will be speaking about various things tonight as well. On the back of the, for those of you who are online, I don't know who's not on that one. I'll put it up on our website. We have a list of all the people who are on our core team. The first one I'd like to introduce is Max Erickson. Max, can you?
Hello, everyone, and folks out there in the land.
He's with the Colorado State Forest Service, and he'll be introducing this whole project of the Community Wildfire Protection Plan. Derek, where'd you go? Derek, he's over here. He's with the Larimer County Emergency Services. He's the one who always shows up when we have a fire in our neck of the woods, so we'd like to have Derek on it. The Larimer County Conservation District is represented by Dylan. Dylan.
Just close enough though.
LLON. Tonight, and Gretchen and Matt are out of town, so they couldn't be here. The Coalition for the Poudre River Watershed is by Dan and his daughter are being represented tonight. And representing the Poudre Canyon Fire Protection District is Hugh and myself. So I'll turn it over to Matt.
Thanks, Betty. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight, and especially folks out on the Zoom land. Let's see if I can back up here and catch me. Cool. So we're here tonight to have our second community meeting for the Poudre Canyon Fire Protection District and the update of their Community Wildfire Protection Plan, or you might hear CWPP throughout the night. So Community Wildfire Protection Plans are an important document for communities to have a conversation about what risks are out, within the district, the fire district in this instance, and coming up with specific projects to help reduce that risk. And an important part of that is the community conversation. So having the community members themselves, some of the leaders within the community with the fire protection district, as well as some of our partners here that we have on the core team tonight. And so I'd really like to just, again, thank you all for showing up, particularly the folks out there in Zoom land. We had this same meeting up at Station 2 on Monday. We're also going to have another one on Friday in Poudre Park at Station 1. And again, I'm just, if you can see the agenda where we're getting to later tonight, but this whole meeting is not to talk at you, but talk with you and to get your input into this process. The core team, as Betty mentioned before, has kind of taken ownership and leadership of producing that document. So, looking at different types of risk maps and talking with you and some of the other practitioners. But, again, tonight, it's important that we hear from you and get your perspective, concerns over risks to wildfire within the district boundary. And so we'll get into an activity here in a little bit. And I think since we have a lot of folks on Zoom, if you could maybe help us out and raise your hand, and we'll give you space to talk about that. But again, this is about hearing from you and talking from that. We're going to be taking some notes. After this, we'll talk about next steps, but just so you can see where this is going. We're going to be looking at all these maps, identifying risk, identifying projects, taking your concerns and putting into a draft document that we'll then put out again for some later review. And from that point on, we'll hopefully get it finalized, I think, later this spring or winter, and move on from there. To help kind of give some context on why these plans are so important, I'm going to have Daniel Bowker with Coalition for the Poudre River Watershed kind of talk about some other communities that have undergone this process and some of the success they're seeing, particularly around getting some grant funding, which this document really helps unlock that barrier to reducing your risk. So with that, David.
Thank you, Max. Is this about right, Megan?
Yep, that's
All right.
perfect.
Most of these folks heard this all the other night, so I'm gonna look at you guys, even though you're up on the screen up there. Can y'all hear me pretty well up there? Yep, good. All right, good deal. Good evening. My name is Daniel Bowker. I'm a forester with the Coalition for the Poudre River Watershed. We're a nonprofit in Fort Collins. Got our start after the High Park fire in 2012 and the flooding in 2013, and started off by doing a bunch of stream restoration, river restoration work. All that, kind of trying to put things back together after the floods and work with the coalition of partners to do that. After a lot of that river restoration work, we started thinking more about the uplands and the forests and how do we manage our forests to make those fires burn in a different and more beneficial, less negatively impactful way in the future. That's me. So we work with a lot of partners in what's called the Northern Colorado Fireshed Collaborative. We call it the Fireshed for short. You can find that online. Got a really nice website, and that is a bunch of partners: CPRW, the Conservation District, the fire districts, the State Forest Service, the U.S. Forest Service, County Emergency Services, Sheriff's Office, OEM, a lot of other partners, all working together for forest health, forest restoration, wildfire mitigation, and overall watershed health in Northern Colorado. It's a big organization. Our area that we're looking at is pretty much the Wyoming border down to Clear Creek County and over into Grand County. So all of Northern Colorado thinking about how do we manage things on a landscape scale with all these partners across jurisdictional boundaries and things like that, to really impact fire behavior and watershed health on a large scale. And so we think a lot about zooming out to the big map and what's the big picture and what's the Forest Service doing on their land. Of course, they're a major landowner in the watershed here and in this fire district for sure. And then we're also zooming in, like tonight, on specific areas around communities, specific fire districts. And so the Fireshed is really, we are partners in this Community Wildfire Protection Plan process. We're here as partners to help communities think through their risk, to identify the resources that they need to really dial in that risk and figure out how to protect the community. And then the Fireshed partners are thinking about, okay, so this community here is doing this. These other communities are doing these things. How does that fit into the larger landscape and the larger Fireshed with Forest Service ground and county ground and state ground and private ground? So there are several community wildfire protection plans coming online at the moment. There was a bunch of them done kind of in the early 2000s for these communities in the upper Poudre watershed and actually in the Big Thompson as well. A lot of those are getting updated right now. And there are a few reasons for that. One, it's time for an update. It's been 10 or 15 or 20 years for some of these. And the other reason is there is some funding coming out at a national scale with billions of dollars instead of just millions and hundreds of thousands as we've seen in the past. So we're really starting to see Washington and Denver and our legislators and others really starting to address this risk with some big money. And some of that grant funding that we're seeing is tied to updating the community wildfire protection plans for these communities. So that's another reason for updating these plans right now. Here in this area, we're in Poudre Canyon District right now. A little to the north, we have, north and east, we have Glacier View Meadows, Glacier View Fire Protection District, and Crystal Lakes is also updating their plan. So Glacier View finished theirs last year. They're a little further along in the process. Crystal Lakes has just finished theirs, and then Poudre Canyons is coming online right now. And then we also have some down in the Big Thompson. Estes Valley has a new one. Glen Haven has a new one, and then some further north up around Cherokee Park. But what we did to kind of bring this down to the practical level, that's great, zooming out and zooming in and that kind of thing. Bringing it down to dollars and implementation for community protection. What we did through the Fireshed, again, this large umbrella organization, we have a fiscal sponsor called the National Forest Foundation, and they helped us as the Fireshed write a large grant to the Community Wildfire Defense Grant Program that's coming out of Washington. And there's a lot of money tied to new Wildfire Protection Plans. Get somebody else. And so what we did, rather than looking at these individual communities and submitting an implementation application for each one, we looked at the larger landscape and took the three that were ready at the time this was due last October, which was Bushview Meadows, Glen Haven, down in the Big Thompson, and Estes Valley. And we packaged those together and asked for some large dollars, asked for about $5.5 million for those three areas, those three communities to do the work that's needed for community protection. And also thinking of that kind of landscape scale, how do these pieces fit together? We haven't gotten word back on that application yet. We should hear by the end of March is the latest word that I've heard there. And if we don't get it, we'll try again. But what we're really trying to do is show the need for protection on a landscape scale and how that fits into the rest of the landscape and the rest of the needs for wildfire mitigation and forest health. And so, you know, this is that application, that specific grant application needed a new updated community wildfire protection plan. That grant should open up again this spring. And we're hoping that Poudre Canyon District's CWPP will be done by then, and then this district will also be eligible to think about that grant application, along with some of the other communities like Crystal Lakes is complete as well. So that's kind of the idea, thinking big, you know, not thinking these communities as just individual communities, although that's what matters tonight. We're going to be looking at, you know, backyards and Forest Service ground and all that in your district, but also thinking of the larger landscape and how these things go together and really trying to show that need on a landscape scale to the funders that do now have this money to do the. So that's kind of the idea. Yeah, anything else to add to that? Yeah, I think that's about it. I'll be here. I'm gonna put some cards down and that kind of thing, but if you guys need us, you can get in touch with me. Betty's got my email address, Daniel at Poudre Watershed, and I'll be here to answer questions too. So thanks for being here tonight. Good to you all too.
Thanks, Daniel.
Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna get into some of the group discussion questions, which Megan, who's running our Zoom show, has put up on the shared screen there. Can you have that the questions that we have up on the screen, okay?
Talking about these, right?
Yep.
These 6.
Jacob or Dee, can you see the questions? Good. Yep. Okay. Awesome. Well, to start it off, let's maybe just hear some introductions so we know who you are, and you know, this is kind of the icebreaker, I guess, how this worked. The previous night we got into just some different tables in person and went through these, but you are our group tonight, and so we will do a group discussion over Zoom. So Jacob, do you want to start? Just tell you who we are and maybe, you know, some of your experiences during the Cameron Peak fire.
Yeah, I own a small cabin on Forest Service land near Agers on 14. I'm also a member of the Poudre Canyon Fire Protection District, volunteer firefighter. My experience with the Cameron Peak fire was I was evacuated most of the time. Put up in a hotel and then couch surfing for quite a while until the Forest Service, the forest land opened up again.
All right. Thank you, Jacob. Let's go to Dee.
Hi, I'm Dee Good. I'm the incoming director of Drala Mountain Center, formerly Shambhala Mountain Center, off of, I think it's 68C. And I was not here during the Cameron Peak fire, but I have tremendous appreciation for all the wildland firefighters and other organizations that showed up to help protect our property and land. So many thanks, and I'll let Mac speak on behalf of Drawla Mountain Center.
Thank you, Dee. Mac?
Yep. Hey, everybody. Nice to connect with you, at least remotely. Lots of friends at DMC in the audience, so I was happy to see Dylan and Daniel, and Betty, of course. So yeah, so the Cameron Peak fire came through DMC property. We lost 19 structures, burned about 2/3 of our property, but we had luckily engaged the services of Dylan and Gretchen at the Laramie County Conservation District to help us with a pretty big chunk of our property that went through a conservation project that helped us be a little bit more fire resilient, and our land is coming back to life pretty well. And we're trying everything we can to try to rebuild some of the structures that were lost. It's really been a huge business impact on us. A lot of the structures that we lost were housing for staff members, and that's really put us into a huge bind. But yeah, delighted to be here to learn more. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Mac. Glad you're here. Let's go. Ken Collins, are you there? All right, Ken, we'll come back to you if you're there. Linda, how about you? Are you online with us tonight?
Yes, we're here. I wasn't sure what this meeting was going to be about. We got an email about it. We live in Savannah, Georgia now, but we have a property not too far from Arrowhead Lodge, in the Poudre Canyon, and came very close to losing it. And we were just curious what's going on. So we're just kind of sitting here. I don't think we have too much to offer, but that fire, we were so thankful it got about 100 feet from our back door. So.
Well, great. We're glad you're here, Linda. And this should be a good conversation tonight, you know, with the folks we have online, but we have a wealth of knowledge with partners in person with us. And, you know, I think just to kind of tee us off here, you know, what we're talking about is, you know, again, creating a fire adapted community. And this community is fire adapted to some extent, right? It did experience a Cameron Peak fire in recent history, but, you know, going forward, how do we continue to be resilient as a community and identify projects that we can reduce the risk? And so what we're going to do, we'll go through some of these questions we have. And we'd love to hear everybody's perspective, whether you were here for the Cameron Peak fire or not. But your perspective is incredibly important to this process. And then I'm just going to tease a little bit. Betty will talk about at the end. If you have more input, you think about some of these questions, there's going to be some additional materials you can access on Poudre Canyon Fire's website. So you can submit further comment later on. But I'll have Betty touch on that at the end, but we will go ahead and just get into some questions here. Well, we did question number 1. I suppose we'll go into question number 2, which is, what are the top 3 things that are going well in your community as they relate to wildfire risk and preparedness?
Oh, I didn't see Ron. Sorry.
Oh, hey, Ron.
He was hiding.
Ron, sorry, I didn't see you there online. Are you with us?
Yes, we're here. It's Julie, Nunley, and Ron. We have a property 42 miles up the Poudre Canyon, and use it mainly in the summer, but we're very blessed that the fire got very close. But due to the remarkable work of firefighters and so many agencies, our property and a structure were saved. So we have a wonderful note from a firefighter that was left on our property. He apologized for using and breaking our broom, trying to get the pine needles off of our roof. And I was like, my gosh, if I could find that firefighter, I'd tell him that's the least of our concern. So we're very blessed that we got through that. and happy to do that. But I think for question 2, I see just a heightened awareness from all of our neighbors and community members about fire mitigation. My mother owned the property for years, and my grandparents before me. And fire mitigation was something that was ingrained in our family, was something we had to do annually. And I think that is something that I see more people paying attention to now around that. But I think that's something that we just have to constantly keep in the forefront for people to know about. And I think it's just heightened awareness about wildfire risk and preparedness.
Absolutely. Thank you for that answer and sharing your experience. How does that land with some of the other folks online tonight, and maybe some different ideas on some things that are going well in the community?
This is Mac. I'll just say that I think, in my experience at Drala, it's, I think what's going really great is that there's so many resources out there, right? I didn't when I started my position, I didn't know much about wildfire, resilience mitigation work, anything like that. And there was tremendous resources and a great willingness to help us. I think that's probably, we certainly benefited from that, and I think our community is stronger for having all of you guys out there doing the hard work on the ground.
Awesome. Thanks, Mac. About any other perspectives from the folks that we have here in person tonight that could share, or maybe some of the things we had discussed on our Monday night meeting as a point of discussion? Anything stick out from any of those, or anybody else online? Feel free to please jump in, but just seeing what else we can get here with question 2.
I mean, yeah, Max, I thought, we had a really good turnout the other night, and we've got a good turnout here online tonight too, honestly. And I think that shows a lot of community support for the process, and support and respect for the fire district and the fire district's leadership in taking on this new Community Wildfire Protection Plan. I mean, it's not something anybody has to do, but the district sees the need and wants to do this for the benefit of the community. So that came out at our table on Monday night.
Yeah,
it was worth sharing.
Awesome. Thanks, Daniel. If not, we'll keep on moving. Again, this is your opportunity, folks that are joining us online, to ask questions, have comments, but we don't need to keep you too long for any reason. But how about question number 3? What are your community's top 3 wildfire related risks? And that could be anything that you view as a risk to wildfire.
Lightning comment. Oh, mine.
Well, at this point, most of the canyon burned, except right around the houses. And the fire crews had plenty of forewarning and did structural protection, and that's what saved the houses. Now, if a fire starts, it's most likely to be around the houses, most likely lightning, could be a campfire that got out of hand. But I mean, there's no time to do anything. It's all defensive, and if people don't mitigate their houses and review the mitigation annually, it gets bad real quick.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's a good thought, and definitely something we'll consider to put into the plan itself and how to attack that, especially for, here we're talking kind of more specifically to the Manhattan area of the fire district, right? Which we have a map that will show everyone here in a little bit, but it does show where that the fire perimeter was, and there's still risk though, right? And so we need to recognize that and identify that and come up with strategies to change that. Thanks, Chief. Eric.
And I neglected to look at actual burn percentage, because perimeter looks very impressive, but I know during the Hyde Park fire, what, 80,000 acres, but 88, and that
About
was
44 burned.
perimeter. And about half of that didn't burn inside that perimeter, and I can't remember what it is for Cameron Peak, so it's a big fire, but there's still a lot of unburned stuff in that fire perimeter. So the risk is still there in some areas.
Totally. And especially this area where it was really spotty.
Yeah. Yeah, especially here in the Manhattan area, it's kind of spotty, or some of it was just an underburn, and next couple of years, all of those grasses and brush are gonna be back.
Right.
Any other thoughts from the folks out in Zoom land on question number 3? Any questions that may have come up from some of the discussion?
Hi, this is John on Linda's computer, her husband, and this not only has to do with our general area of where the fire had taken place, but all of Colorado. Over the last 15 years, we've had such beetle kill, dead trees throughout the state. It's just amazing that there haven't been more fires, but to the Forest Service, well, let me back up to the Canyon Fire Department and all the volunteers. We are so incredibly grateful. We are so thankful, thankful. Just amazed at all that they've done. And as far as future prevention, I noticed that, okay, the fire started only 10 miles from us and just spread over what, 2.5 months, an incredible fire. And it was so difficult for them to get equipment in the area, and to plow very rough roads. And an incredible amount of money has been spent on the fire, but also can money be spent for future fires through the entire state of Colorado, where there can be some fire trails to possibly get some equipment. I know you can't get equipment all over because of how severe the mountains are, but why wait till there's a fire and then start? There was so much money spent on the fire. What about in prevention, to put in some fire roads where there haven't been trails made? And because throughout Colorado, there's so much dead timber from the beetle kill that it's going to go from one area to another eventually. That's all I'm going to say for now. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I think you bring up a couple good points there, that the health of our forests, the insects and disease, is related to the amount of available fuel across the landscape, and then also our ability to do a lot of work beforehand. And I think this process right now in the Community Wildfire Protection Plan document is such an important piece to really making sure we can do this. Daniel talked about the amount of funding that's becoming available, and it's at an order of magnitude that has not happened before. And so I think we're all working towards it, and I really appreciate your thoughts and comments on that. I think that's spot on.
Something else that John said there, Max, too. What did we see again? Was it every dollar spent on the front end is like $6 to $8 of savings on the back end of the fire?
Yeah, if not more.
Yep, if not more.
Yeah.
Certainly.
So
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Crazy.
Yeah, we might as well spend it to do the mitigation instead of the recovery.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts on question 3? Otherwise, we can move on, and please interrupt me at any moment, but maybe we'll just move on to question number 4. What are 3 opportunities or any opportunities that you see for improvement within the community? All right, no concerns. We get it.
I think if everybody does their part to fix their area and mitigate it, it could go a long way.
Yeah, right.
This is Julie. One of the things I always worry about in the canyon is communication. And I know when the fire started, the sheriff went door to door, banging on our doors to tell us we had to try to get out. Is there, and I know with the canyon, I know it's hard with cell phone, but is there any plans or talk about a better communication plan or how to get the word spread if there is concern in the canyon again?
If I can.
Yeah, we'll have Derek with Laramie County Emergency Services speak.
So yeah, cell service, do I need to move? Well, see if it tracks me.
Here, let me,
So cell service, as we all know, is gonna be an issue here. One of the biggest things that you can do, and granted, we're not always on our computer, when folks come out here, or coming out here to be in nature and not sit in their house all day and wait for a phone call. But if you went to nocoalerts.org, you can sign up for notifications to your landline, your cell phone. So if you happen to be down in Fort Collins in cell service, and also for email to receive any alerts of any voluntary or mandatory evacuations. And even if you live in Georgia and you happen to be out there and something's going on in the canyon that requires evacuations, you can still get notified so you have an idea of what's going on. I don't know of any plans from any of the cell companies to start trying to put towers or anything up along the canyon. It's kind of one of the reasons I know I like to get out of cell range at times, but it also makes things kind of tricky. So signing up for that, and then just being aware of the weather and current conditions out there, and having that plan of if we need to evacuate, do we have a go bag? Lermer.gov, look up Office of Emergency Management. They have a ton of resources in there about how to prepare for any emergency, not just wildfire. I hope that helps, but that's kind of about where we're at communication wise, just even technology wise. Who knows, maybe in the future with satellite, cell phones, things like that, they may have something, but for the near future, it's being aware of the conditions and going to nocoalerts.org and getting signed up to be notified in however you want to be notified.
Yeah.
Hope that helps.
Thanks, Derek. Good perspective, and what I think a great question too. And thinking in terms of preparing this community for incidents and being a fire adapted community, knowing what your communication channels are and the capacity to have that, but also maybe doing a little bit of planning through this process to, maybe increase some of the roadsides and some of the risk that might be associated there in case there is not communication, right? Those are the sorts of projects and things we would hope to be identifying through this process, and we will be identifying. Any other thoughts or questions on question number 4?
With those communications issues, I know on Monday we were talking about one of the things that happens is the power lines go out and the telephone lines, and what can we do to prevent that?
Right.
So.
Yeah, good point. Thanks, Paula.
So that was something that came up too, and some of these folks are in the canyon, even though we're in Manhattan tonight, this is our virtual option for other folks too. I mean, that definitely came up with the flood risk and that kind of thing too. I mean, it was the sheriff and others, we hand out some of those, emergency radios, and even those don't work that well in the canyon. So yeah, you can't even really get the weather alerts, and so, I mean, what we started to tell people was if it's raining, you might as well head to town.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just kind of where it is. Be aware.
Be aware.
So, you know,
And some of the flooding issues related to post wildfire is certainly something we are thinking about and considering in this process. All right, let's move along to question 5. What are some barriers to achieving these types of improvements within the community? Any barriers that exist out there from, we often hear cost of work or the time and effort to carry trees. Or those are examples, but we want to hear from you all as well.
I know,
Last night I heard a lot of folks being, somewhat frustrated with neighbors and the lack of their ability to reach out to people that maybe they would rather have, their neighbors mitigated their property, whether that be Forest Service or, someone that just lives right next to them. There was some frustration, like, how can we get our neighbor to care? So.
Certainly a barrier. Absolutely. Chief, I know we've talked about this a little bit. Do you have any perspective on working with barriers or increasing community communications and resilience?
All we can do is talk to people and make them aware of the things they could do to drastically improve their chance of saving their cabin. In some cases, it's the road in that needs to be fixed. In some cases, it's the landscaping around the cabin that needs to be addressed.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. Couple different scales that, we're thinking about doing this type of work.
it's especially a barrier when you live in Georgia or Texas or Iowa and you come out just for a week or 2 weeks and you don't want to spend the whole vacation mitigating and cutting trees and so it's hard to get it all done in a short period of time.
Yes. And not to jump ahead, but I think, we've seen in other communities and actually in this community right now that, when you come together as a community to attack these problems, light or many hands make light work, that sort of thing. The Fire Protection District currently has a chipping program that they receive some grant funding towards, and that's helping reduce some of the risk throughout the canyon. The idea is to kind of, get communities together, whether that be subsections of the district, or maybe there might exist some HOA or road associations, but, kind of getting people together so that we can attack, this problem and not have it land on any individual homeowner. I think that's an idea we've seen success in and would like to continue to push. Yes, Carl.
So one of our interesting events in doing structural protection, Cameron Peak, and I had this conversation with the chief, an amusing story of, well, we're on, it was structure 24, they're numbered, it's up in the Meadow area up north. And apparently this individual contacted you and said, well, hey, can you move my pickup truck out of the garage? We're trying to, do mitigation around the structure. That's not the kind of thing that we do, and we don't want to get in that business, but it raises the fascinating question of what if we put as part of our plan that the people who either have already filled out and we did a survey, we got input on, what their concerns are and what their challenges are to getting things done. If they know they want to get it done, but they know they can't do it, can they write a simple, or can we provide a simple form letter that is a delegation that allows that to happen? This guy wanted to delegate moving the truck to you. I don't want to do that, but point being, if they have an interest in getting their stuff mitigated, but they can't do it at some point. Because if you take this to its worst case scenario, let's say you've got a bunch of homeowners that want to work on something and you got 2 or 3 that don't. Okay, they're either absentee or for whatever reason they don't want to pay or whatever, you know, like a homeowners association, at some point, can you say, well, we all need to do this, and do you want to contribute? I mean, at some point, we're going to get to that part of the discussion. And so I'm just saying, one of the barriers might be, is there a way to delegate and give authority for, or the right to do some of that stuff on their behalf? And I think we should start exploring.
Absolutely. You know, I think it depends upon the type of work we're talking about. You know, I think a lot of the other partners here have done some level of that, maybe not being delegated, but helping organize groups of folks together to get work completed. But I think that's a great point. And Betty, I see you taking notes. That's something we should discuss further and see what that would look like, right?
I know Warren's dancing with that with the North Rim Road.
Yep.
Totally. And people that don't want to play. What are you gonna do? Yeah.
Or you have people who aren't physically capable of doing the work.
Or are only there that 1 week and they don't want a working vacation, you know, but maybe they would help pay to get it done.
Right.
Right? How do we get that property added to a contract? Without a delegation?
Sure. Yeah.
You know, Dylan can't spin up a contract if we got some people who are not, you know, landowners party to the party, you know, to the contract. And a letter of delegation could do that. And it's a way to facilitate.
Absolutely.
I have a contracting background, that's why I'm.
So we'll look to you, right? Any other thoughts from the folks out in Zoom joining us on question number 5? All right, well, then we're gonna move to the last one, which is looking at a map. And the intent on this particular question is to look at the fire protection district. And in this case tonight, maybe we could do both. And hear from you, the community, on where you see some of the highest risks spatially. And so if you look at the map that Megan is pulling up on the screen for you, you can see the outline of the Poudre Canyon Fire Protection District, and it's zoomed into the sub area of the Manhattan Street area, which Station 2 is in. You can also see the perimeter of the Canyon Peak Fire coming from the west side there. And you can see some of the roads and features, 68C coming in from the northeast. You can see 74E up in the top corner. And then, what is that, 69? Is that the road that comes up from the Poudre Canyon? Just kind of orient folks to where we're at. And then in the top right of this map, there is a zoomed out version where you can see the red box is kind of where this map is looking at, but it shows the entire fire protection district boundary. And so, you know, what we were hoping to hear from you, are there any areas that you know of because you live here, you drive by there, work there within the fire protection district, or maybe just outside of the fire protection district that you think is one of the higher risk areas to wildfire?
You can tell, given the topographic lines, that no matter where the fire is burning, it's probably gonna be burning fast if it's going up one of those hills. Whether it's burnt timber or green, I think that the topography also makes it a little more dangerous.
Yeah,
Especially if you're at the upper end of one of those drainages.
totally. Yeah, we know box canyons and features like that exasperate the fire behavior and make it very difficult. So certainly something to consider. Jacob, if you're with us, we'd like to hear if you see any risks out here, and if not, that's fine too, but you know, this is our opportunity to hear from you all.
I just worry about the unburned stuff, at the bottom of the canyon. To the east.
Absolutely. Are you talking like down where it says Indian Meadows, or are you talking further east from there?
Yep. Well,
Okay.
Indian Meadows up to the fire line, in the Manhattan segment.
Yeah. Great. Forest Service.
Yeah, winter steam plateau, behind the Boy Scout.
Yeah, Jacob makes a good point there. I mean, this is not only what's in your district, but it's, you know, what's in the canyon that's unburned. And what could possibly start in the district and burn into another district, which, you know, we've got Glacier View Fire Protection District just to the east there. So yeah, thinking about it on that scale of fire behavior and what could start where and where would it go.
Yep.
What's the timeline that this CWPP is supposed to keep good for?
CWPPs are supposed to be updated every 5 years. And so when we're putting together the document, we'll be highlighting specific areas throughout the district and giving some ranking priority to them to achieve some risk reduction projects. Over the 5 years, we'll revisit with the point of saying, what did we accomplish? What sort of major changes happened on the landscape? And what are those new set of priorities every, 5 years or so?
Okay, yeah, that just seems like an important consideration in identifying areas of greatest risk, because what those areas are now may not be the same in 5 years.
Absolutely.
And in this area that's already burned in some area.
Yep.
I would like to see in that area north of the 68C. There's a lot of private land along 68C. The forest did a lot of mechanical, handwork and piles up in that area, but then within a half mile of the private property to the dock. I would like to see that last half mile also cleaned up. I would also like to see the area along the Elkhorn Stream, which you don't show streams on here, is also an area that they did the top of it, but the gully down to the stream where all the stuff was, they stopped at. I'd like to see it mitigated. That's what we need to put pressure on the Forest Service to do.
So
Yes.
those are some areas to maybe circle on the map. Yes, identified as priority area. And some of that is part of the Black Diamond project, isn't it?
Yep.
And on something I read today, everybody's inundated with stuff. That the Forest Service now can do fire lines in areas. And there's a couple of areas, there's an area around Rustic where every year, every time we've had a big major fire, like the Hyde Park fire, the Canyon Peak fire, they'd come in with bulldozers and did fire lines. Well, instead of dumping crap on the fire lines to mitigate it, why don't they widen those areas that they had fire lines in and make them an area that some of our residents could go up and mow and make them a permanent type of fire break in that area?
I think that's worth exploring. We don't have anybody from the U.S. Forest Service with us tonight, but they would better be prepared to answer that, what that might look
How
like.
can we sit down and twist their arm?
Good question.
Pardon?
That would be Matt Champa, who's the fuel guy on Canyon Lake.
But it seems stupid to go in every year and do this, every time we have a major fire, and do a fire line in the same location.
And he even agrees with you? So the other comment, and this is for Max McGoldrick's, good, Carl Brown with Boy Scout Ranch, as well as being on the department. We are currently working with the Canyon Lakes District on a volunteer agreement between the Adventure West Council Boy Scouts and the Forest Service to do the little pockets and pieces of Forest Service land that are along 68C that are untreated. So that the mitigation that's happened on the Boy Scout Ranch can be as effective down through like 40 more feet of Forest Service stuff that's getting ignored. And that same kind of operation might leverage the ability to help do that piece that previous speaker just talked about up on the winter skiing, where you've got the potential of it coming out of the Poudre Canyon going north. Remember, your gradient winds are blowing out of the northwest. And so, you know, it's pushing your fire that way. You see how the tongue of the fire went to the east under those gradient winds. And so working on that piece between the current red fire line and the bottom boundary of the Manhattan box, that piece of the Poudre Canyon up on top is the winter skiing plateau. And there's a road system in there that comes out through the Boy Scout Ranch. And I'm suggesting our work with the Forest Service might also blend into that.
Yeah.
And it may be small enough and not part of the bigger Black Diamond planning process.
Sure.
Is it one of those things you just do it and then?
Yeah, I thought about trying to get forgiveness after, but I've worked on this ranger district. I don't think that's. You know,
You don't want Lenore to get
I don't want Lenora writing another ticket for Bob Food.
Didn't they do a prescribed burn kind of in that area?
Yes,
Yeah, they
yes,
did it
Downward Glacier.
on the south side of that line there, that's the 68C.
Yeah,
That was a prescribed burn 3 to 5 years earlier.
Yep.
And the fire bypassed it. It didn't.
Yep.
It didn't touch that. It went to where there was more fuel.
Yeah.
our mitigation right across the way from Drala proves mitigation works. You literally look across the valley at Drala that's got moonscaped, and then it got to the Scout Ranch and it came out of the crowns. We stopped the crown fire, it went on the ground, the dozer line caught it. And so the other stuff in the Elkhorn units 3 and 5 that Ember Alliance has helped burn is all helping. So right now, Glacier View's got like 600 acres of treated mitigated land upwind of it. They ought to be happy.
Yeah. Mac, I don't know if you're still with us, but I'd like to hear your perspective, you know, being in this area for a little while and, on perceived risk, or, you know, what remaining risk might still exist out there, especially with Carl's comments about some of the work they plan on doing with the Scout Ranch.
Yeah, I'd love to learn more about what's happening there, and see if, you know, as you were talking, I was trying to piece together in my head what a map might look like where on our property or on adjacent properties are these black holes, you know, are there missing pieces of our conservation work. So I mean, I guess I don't have a really interesting thing to contribute other than now I'm thinking about those things and I'd love to learn more.
Yeah, great. Well, should you in the future see a hill slope or something that you think, oh gosh, I wish that would be mitigated, you know, we'll have opportunities for all folks within the community here to continue to provide some feedback to this process. And, you know, the intent is to make this document a living document that's a reflection of the community. Because again, this document is written for and by the community. That's why we're here tonight, to get your input. But thanks. Anything else? We're a little bit earlier than what we're planning, but we've gotten through the questions that we had tonight. But I just wanted to maybe take a moment and give some space for any other thoughts that folks have, questions about the process, questions about wildfire risk mitigation, anything like that. Again, this is you know, your time that we want to hear from you.
I'll just add something, Max, if I can.
Please, thank you.
For some folks, and Betty will talk about this towards the end. Some folks is maybe kind of new, saw the announcement, trying to figure out what this is all about. And like Max said, it's a living document. We're still in the drafting stages, so if you think of things, get on Poudre Canyon Fire's website and fill out those comments that Betty's gonna talk about later. All of that is great information as we start putting this thing together. And more we hear from you, the more it reflects your community.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Derek. It's good, great point. Anything else from the folks joining us online?
Yes, this is John again, and one thing I want to say, I sort of had some difficulty finding people to mitigate my property. One person I found out of Walden was Anthony Gonzalez, and we brought in he brought in his crew of 6 guys for 2 days to mitigate on our property. Yeah, it wasn't cheap, but I just feel this is our property. We're doing our part in the area for mitigation, just as I would expect our neighbors throughout to do the same. But I don't know if there's a list of people that you could refer that do mitigation work, and but if just as a recommendation, this fella and his crew, Andy Gonzalez out of Walden, did an excellent job.
That's great to hear. Thank you for sharing that. I think most of the folks here on the core team could make recommendations if you get in touch with any one of us. I will just say as well, on the website for the Colorado State Forest Service, under my field office, the Fort Collins field office page, we do maintain a list of local contractors who do forest management type work. That is certainly a resource that you can go check out and make some connections yourself. But again, I think anybody on the core team that's with us here tonight, which we have contact information in some of the materials on the Poudre Canyon's Fire Protection District website as well. So get in touch with one of us, check out the list we have, and keep going there. But thank you for taking that initiative and starting that work, and we'll continue to do that. Any other thoughts?
Is that on this page?
Go to the top. About us. Field offices. Fort Collins. Scroll down a little further. Left, Fort Collins.
Okay.
And then, where is it? Scroll down a little bit. Resources.
Sorry to interrupt. This is Mac. I'm gonna have to sign off. I just wanted to thank everybody. Thanks for having me.
The 2020.
Thanks, Mac.
Good to see you, Mark.
Thanks, Mac.
Yep. See you guys.
And Megan, for the folks online, is going to post the link to the contractor resources from the State Forest Service. All right. Hearing no more comments, we'll wrap this up. Again, I just like to thank you for joining us. Thank you to the core team for being here tonight. And as we continue to move forward, just look out for more drafts, more information about this community wildfire protection process on the fire district's website. And we'll get the website link in the chat for you here in a second. But also, you are the community. We want to hear from you. We also would like to, challenge you to go out and reach to some of your community members who may not have been able to show up tonight and continue this conversation. It is, a community conversation we'd like to keep having and help you with that.
Poudre Canyon Fire District.org.
And as Megan puts that in the chat, I'm going to turn it over to Betty to end us. and talk about how you can provide input at a later date.
You scroll down a little bit on the front page, we have Community Wildfire Protection Plan right there. Click on that link. And we have information about where you can go to. We have the December webinar up there, mitigation hazard survey that you could take and answer questions. If you see something that needs to be mitigated, use that hazard survey and you can fill it in and then we'll get to us. And also, if you're doing mitigation and paying for mitigation, tell us about it, because we can get credit for your hours of work on the grants that we are applying for. So, that's all right there. I think I put the older community wildfire protection plans on there as well. Yes,
Right.
that's it.
Great.
Well, thank everybody.
Thank you all who
Thanks.
are online.
Thank you so much for doing this by Zoom.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.